Welcome to the Football Show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, Alan Ruff, Hugh McDonald and Cara Henderson here with us on the show. A baptism of fire for you, Cara. Delighted that you are with us here, and obviously Cara's going to keep us up to date with what you have to say about what we've just witnessed over the last 24 hours. Dramatic events taking place at Celtic where Brendan Rodgers resigned, and then after the announcement came officially from Celtic, there was a further statement from the majority shareholder at Celtic, Dermot Desmond, which was scathing to say the least about Brendan Rodgers and his departure. And then within the last hour, we've had an old familiar face or two trapping at the Celtic press conference, because Martin O'Neill is in as the interim manager of Celtic, ably assisted by Sean Maloney. 25 years ago, hard to believe, he was on those steps doing basically a speech saying he would give everything to try and bring success to Celtic, and now he's faced with the task of trying to eat his words from 24 hours ago when he said Hearts were in the box seat to win the title. Now he's got to try and first of all get a win tomorrow night against Falkirk, and then the small matter of a semi-final in the Premier Sports Scottish League Cup. So that's against Rangers, let's not forget. Give us your thoughts. Cara's going to read out as many as possible. We're right across YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and TikTok Live as well. So we want to hear from you. What have you got to say? We'll be going out there live to Celtic Park as well, where a bitterly cold Kerry Pollock is there just to give us a quick, brief update on Martin, his arrival, the feelings among those Celtic fans, and of course the key points that he made. And I think we'll cut to Kerry first and foremost. Because,
well, we can.
Well, we can, in case she gets blown away. Kerry, we can tell it's bitterly cold, but first of all, around Celtic Park, you've been courting the Celtic fans and getting their thoughts on the return of what many believe is one of their beloved sons, Martin O'Neill.
Yes, Peter, you're exactly right. As you can tell, it's a wonderful day here in the East End of Glasgow, just behind me there, Celtic Park. I think everyone in the Scottish press had to down tools and turn their attention to Celtic at 10 o'clock last night. As you mentioned, that statement was released that Brendan Rodgers indeed was resigning as manager. I was speaking to some fans here earlier on this morning on the appointment of former Celtic manager Martin O'Neill. The thoughts were a bit mixed, to be honest. A lot of were saying that, he has experience, he has proven success here at the club, so maybe he could try and get a trick out of this bunch of players that haven't been hitting the heights that he knows that they can. But there was another half of the fans that I spoke to that suggested that perhaps Martin O'Neill, he is a bit older, he's 73 years of age now. The game has evolved in ways that maybe it wasn't and when he was in here as boss, but can he get a trick out of these players? Time will tell. He does have a challenge set for him. They are 8 points behind Hearts in the league table at the moment. They have a challenge against Falkirk here tomorrow night, and of course, as you mentioned, that semi-final against Rangers on Sunday. But you mentioned as well his comments on the radio just 24 hours ago before he was asked to be interim boss here. He said that Rangers aren't a challenge. He doesn't see them as a threat at all this season. And of course, Hearts, he said, who sit at the top of the Premiership table, he mentioned that this is their time.
That is a very interesting comment. Just before you go, Kerry, the key issue as well that a lot of people will be wondering is the manner of Brendan's departure. What's the feeling among the Celtic fans to Brendan and the board in all this?
Yes, absolutely. I think we were all just as shocked as the fans I spoke to here today at Brendan's resignation. The fans say some mixed again as well, saying that maybe it was a great time for Brendan to leave the club. He wasn't getting a tune out of these players. The performances, the results weren't great. Of course, his comments in isolations, the statements about the Range Rovers and the Ferraris and the Honda Civics for that matter might not have gone on well with the players, but some say that they won't get another manager of the same calibre as Brendan Rodgers. But happy to see Martin O'Neill try and steer this club in a positive direction since Brendan's departure.
Brilliant. I don't think it was too long before Kerry is actually going to be blown away, so absolutely.
Could I just ask for Kerry just to stay on for the whole programme, because I think it would help me. Our input has been, as an old 70-year-old man with Martin O'Neill, Kerry could maybe come in and back and forward until about 6 o'clock tonight. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Kerry, I don't think that's happening to you.
I would need a wage rise for that, Peter, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
Well, on that note, bye. Fantastic. Absolutely great input. Great input from Kerry there out at Celtic Park, and she's been on her travels today out there at Rangers as well. Well, the crux of it all has been basically the last 24 hours. Hugh, what have you made of it?
It's like all these. For a while, I've been expecting his departure because I thought the whole situation was untenable. I just thought it was untenable, and I was expecting his departure. But whenever it comes, it's still a surprise. But that surprise was then absolutely compounded by the most amazing statement I've read in 54 years in journalism. That strong a statement, I could be that strong. Never read anything like that before in my puff. I mean, it was extraordinary. It was like a mushroom cloud had went up, like frustration, anger, everything boiled over. So.
It was one of those press releases, statements that you actually... I've been in a few press conferences, and I was only a couple of weeks ago talking about some of the most unbelievable political speeches. Geoffrey Howe's in the departure savage Margaret Thatcher. But I was reading the press conference, I was reading the press statement going, oh, and it's very rare you get a situation where you see a majority shareholder, or an owner or a chairman or a chief executive. Very rare you see them being so forthright, savaging the outgoing manager. And just to briefly give a quick rundown of some of those key points. When we brought Brendan back to Celtic 2 years ago, it was done with complete trust and belief in his ability to lead the club into a new era of sustained success. Unfortunately, his conduct and communication in recent months have not reflected that trust. So that was the first right hook, Ruffy.
Yeah, I think we've all realised that there has been things going on behind the scenes for a wee while now, and we were waiting on it coming out, and obviously I think we were taken a wee bit of surprise by what had happened in such a short time. But certainly, as we all know, there are two sides to a story. Until he comes out with his side of his story, then we really can decide what side we're going to fall on, But that statement has totally damned, the manager, and it'll be interesting to see what he comes back with. Before
I go through some of the other points, Cara, there's quite a lot of reaction on our social media across Twitter, TikTok, Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you throughout the show, any questions you've got for the guys. It's interesting, it's quite split at the moment. I think quite a few people are thinking that Brendan Rodgers has left as soon as the pressure's been cranked up. I think that's a point. I think it's interesting. But I'd like to get your thoughts, first of all, on Dermot Desmond. There's a lot of chat here saying that it's pretty bang out of order for him to release a statement like that. Would you say that that's fair?
Well, this is the point that I think we've all got to digest, because certainly I don't see Brendan coming back immediately with some kind of reply to all of this. I think he's going to go low profile and then pick his moment with a favourable journalist to actually deliver some kind of justification for his actions. But for Dermot to be so vehement in his condemnation is unbelievable.
Yeah, this isn't a critique of a manager that he's announced. This is a critique of a character, of a person, of a personality, of conduct, of trust, even betrayal. I mean, it's that. I mean, this isn't saying, "Oh, we're very sorry. He didn't pick the right team against Hearts, or he should have kept Lagerbielke." I mean, this guy has been saying stuff that doesn't chime, shall we say, with Dermot's recollections of reality and truth. So it's astonishingly frank. I was making the observation with one of my colleagues earlier today that the Celtic fans they were always calling for transparency. I've never seen anything as transparent a statement as that. It was. I mean, it answers every point, Pierre. See, like the points that we were saying, well, who signs the players? He's signing some. Right in that statement, he says, no player came in here or went out of here without his say-so.
Yeah.
Or was Brendan really back? I met Brendan and asked him in a meeting, give me one instance of when you weren't back. He couldn't do so. I'm paraphrasing here, but, everything.
Yeah. Even the contract offer, he nailed that as well.
He nails the contract offer. and there's no room for so people point out it could be a wee bit of wiggle room that they were keen to, that they physically offer. But the other things is there's no room for wiggle room in the other things. He's talking about, he's talking in categorical.
Yeah, this point here that
terms.
he makes, Hugh, is despite ample opportunity when they met him for 3 hours, he said he was unable to identify a single instance where the club had obstructed or failed to support him. The facts did not match his public narrative. And regrettably, his words and actions since then have been divisive, misleading and self-serving.
Yep.
And he blames them for creating the toxic atmosphere.
I think, I mean, I wouldn't buy into that necessarily. I think there's a toxic. There has been transfer windows did have a bit to do with that. There is the perception that Celtic amongst fans that Celtic's not spending the money that they have, could have brought in players quicker. We've been all through this and shows so many times. So I don't think it's completely down to Brendan Rodgers. But one thing he didn't do is he never calmed that. There was always a wee trail of petrol on the match. It was always
After every press, every game there was a thinly veiled swipe.
And you had one press conference said, "Well, let's not talk about it. This is all in the past. The transfer window. Let's not talk about it." And 2 minutes later, he brought it up.
Yeah.
So, and the Honda Civic thing, I think, is catastrophic because not only is it catastrophic to people that you work with and for. But it's catastrophic in the dressing room. These people are young men. If you've come half the way over from Japan or you've come from Scandinavia or Sweden, wherever you've come from, and somebody said, basically, you're duds.
But there's so many layers to this, and lots of people have got their point of view, and I'm going to get Cara to read out more than a few of them. But Ruffy, on that key point, I think you've got to offer some balance to this, and I am of the opinion that Dermot has been scathing about Brendan Rodgers in a number of bullet points from his statement that probably would make lesser men wince, but that's not necessarily the way you have to take the statement from Dermot, because he's not the light, the way and the truth on this. He's only giving you his riposte to a situation that has arisen, a conversation that may well have happened between them yesterday when he eventually offers his resignation. It's not necessarily that you have to believe everything that Dermot says.
Sure. Yeah, and as you said there, you could look at the statements and dig a wee bit deeper. The statement for me that he said any player that left or came in was Brendan Rodgers' shout, but he omits who gets him over the line. He omits when players come in. Brendan's done his bit. He said, right, I want him, and him, but he's left out why it failed to bring these players in. I don't think that was Brendan's show. And I think if you look at the previous managers, if you look at Ange and you look at Lenny and you look at Delia, they all had the same problem. If you see quotes for them, they're saying, well, I don't know how it took us so long to get him over the line, or I don't know what goes on in that fact. But
interesting you make that point, Ruffy, but this is where I don't believe the process. I believe that Brendan was informed of he's coming in, or this one's coming in. I don't necessarily, accept the fact that Brendan said, well, this guy will definitely contribute to us and I want him. I don't believe that happened in the process. I believe that the conveyor belt and the way that they go about recruiting players is, well, we've got this guy coming in and this guy. You can't possibly think that Brendan Rodgers signs off on Inamura and then a week later slaughters the boy.
Well, that's the thing, and he may have signed off on him in a sort of desultory, almost disinterested way.
Yeah.
That somebody comes to him and says, "We've got his fine." And that's where the dysfunction is.
That's the point. That's the key point, Hugh.
I think so. And there's a difference between signing off a player and investing in a player, investing yourself. And so you might sign off on, somebody that repairs a car or something like that. But somebody that handles all your social media output. You're going to invest in them.
Yes.
You're going to, there's different roles. And
Well, the difference is, you're giving, and to use the analogy with the Honda Civic, you're handing it over to somebody, but you're not necessarily watching, and you're not necessarily, ticking off that this person's the right person to fix the car. And right now, he was in a situation where I think, and you might disagree, Ruffy, on this, but I think he was brought in a clutch of players that are part of this process at Celtic, and they were not necessarily what he wanted. I think he was in a situation where he was looking for maybe 2 or 3 players that he had earmarked, in the same way Ange Postecoglou had, that Celtic either dragged their heels or didn't pursue the way he wanted to get those deals done, because I don't believe for a minute the first 7 signings in the summer were all the ones that he said. Why did he come out after those 7 signings and say, we need those 2 or 3 quality players?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, that's why there's 2 sides of the story. It'll be really interesting when he's asked that question, as I'm sure he will be, what was the dialogue with these players coming in. I mean, there's no doubt about it, he's brought in some bad buys, the ones that haven't worked. That happens in every club, but he's actually peeved that it wasn't done at the beginning, because he identified that the club, the team itself was stagnant, and it never happened. And he did it in a way that the supporters bought into his theory. I don't remember seeing any posters of Brendan Rodgers going up. All it was the board. The board got it. He'd manipulated it in a way that, hey, this has nothing to do with me. This is their fault. And that's why the posters went up. That's where all the protests have been going. It's been the board that's been getting it, not Brendan.
Yeah, but I don't think he was the sole orchestrator, Hugh. I mean, I think he was guilty of, this underlying, as we've been mentioning, this underlying read between the lines. I'm not happy. I haven't been given what I want. There's clearly a breakdown along the way. But I don't think he was the sole orchestrator of it. That for me is to, in some way, be disparaging towards the more intelligent of supporters who can see what has happened over a longer period of time, and they're not happy with certain things that have gone on.
That was a great Hugh Keevins line, that the more intelligent supporters supporting your theory.
No, well, can I just say something to you? Can I just say
all
something?
the ones people that don't agree with are the less intelligent supporters.
Sorry. By the way, can I just say something to you? If there ever is an invisible baseball bat, you've just delivered it to me. So I bow to you and say to you, okay, dismantle my comments.
No, I won't. I think, the idea that all this brouhaha, for once of better words, or this crisis, which it is of Brendan Rodgers' making, and he's the the idea that would still be. There's been there's been a narrative that has preceded Brendan Rodgers that has been there since Martin O'Neill left, funnily enough. What about spending money, and people call it investing, but other people call it throwing money away or whatever. That's been a narrative for long. Yeah. And one of the classic things with Celtic, because it's such an absurd thing, football, and such a wonderful thing, is Celtic's biggest problem is they've got too much money.
Yes. I think that exacerbated the madness.
Oh, and exacerbated the rationale, the rational people as well, because the rational people are saying, if you've got 70 million, tell us what you're going to do with it. And even the board admitted to it. They were literally, imagine this, I'd love to live to be 100 and admit they were cash rich. So the board knew there was a problem there. My problem with Brendan, and I think Desmond's problem with Brendan, was that this was all being said in public. As soon as it died down, and it was hurting people inside the building, there was people getting threats, there was people getting shouted at, people and that. And every time, I would imagine, I have no source for this, but I'd imagine there's been a period where Dermot has gone to Brendan and said, let's calm it, let's get... Because there was wee periods where he kind of shut up, and then he comes back again. And I think this anger has built up to a situation where, remember, this was a resignation. Celtic didn't fire him. But it built up to a situation where it was inevitable that Brendan Rodgers was going to leave the club. He was either going to jump or at one point when they got somebody suitable, they were going to bin him.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think he was ever in danger at some points of coming out with the stroke that he pulled the last time, because he would have had to have gone to Ben Becula, you know, and put a wig on and a dress.
And that's Alan's job.
Yeah, absolutely. Cara, there's more than a few people that want to have their say.
There's loads. There's a lot of people saying, why is Dermot Desmond released a statement now? He usually has a step back. Why is he? But I think this is an interesting one on Brendan Rodgers, because regardless of everything, Shadow 7 has said, Peter, why didn't he change his style to suit the players he brought in? He stuck with Ange's style, then changed it even though it was working. And is that not a point as well, that regardless of all the stuff about recruitment, investment, the board, he still had a job to do on the pitch with his players, and that wasn't working at the end?
Well, he didn't deliver, Ruffy, and you can only judge on what you're seeing. And the Celtic fans eventually, from that point that Hugh is saying, where their focus of anger and shouting at individuals, suddenly in the last couple of weeks started to switch and say, wait a minute, this is this guy's team, and it's a team, even with injuries. That squad should have been capable of beating Kairat Almaty. Dundee should not have been embarrassed by a Motherwell side that eventually gifted them a way back into the game. And then, it wasn't a game where Hearts dominated it with skill. Celtic had the most possession. They were outfought by Hearts.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Derek McInnes came out with it after Saturday saying, I've not got the finances they've got, so well done my players. I just feel from Brendan Rodgers' side is any players that they brought in haven't been anywhere near the quality of the people that's left. Kyogo, the centre forward, you know, Kuhn leaving, Jota's injured, obviously. I just think that last 4 or 5 players that have come through the door aren't anywhere near the quality of what Celtic had.
Yeah, I like this one from Chris Fraser. He says, Peter Martin, how dare you call me dumb? Which I knew I was going to get hooked into. That's your best line of the day. You just leathered me brilliantly. But you know, lots of Celtic fans have their say on it. I mean, you've written about it. I've written about it this morning. I was up there at 1:30 in the morning, typing away. The problem I have with Brendan in his 2 stints is I look at his return, and he said, I'll be here 3 years unless the board get rid of me. But it just reverted back to Groundhog Day, Hugh. And that Groundhog Day was quite simply that on the 12th of February, and I've pinpointed it as the line in the sand, on the 12th of February, when I thought he was at his highest point as a Celtic manager, where the performance by his team in the Allianz Arena was first class. But even in that performance, I looked and I said, he deserves all the credit and all the praise. That's the best I've seen Celtic since the Martin O'Neill days, maybe, or a couple of Neil Lennon and Gordon Strachan performances. But the board had already derailed him then. They'd already sold Kyogo and not replaced him. And they'd gone through this same situation, you know, that people had become accustomed to before. And even at that point, he came out in the press conference afterwards and said, what a performance. This is what we can achieve. This is the chance for us to take that next step. And everybody thought that was going to be the case. But from that moment on, and from that game, Hugh, you watched the gradual disintegration of the way the team played, their competitive nature in the domestic games, because they were no longer lifting themselves for the big challenge of this new Champions League format. And then you saw them lose to Celtic. Then you saw them lose to Rangers, sorry. Then you saw them draw with Rangers. Then you saw them lose a Scottish Cup final to a more mediocre Aberdeen side that you never met in your life.
Yeah, there has been a disintegration of the thing. It's very Brendan Rodgers, of course, because that's what tends to happen in the third year of a Brendan Rodgers, that things do stagnate and go down. I read a very interesting book. It's called How to Win the Premier League. It's by Ian Graham, who was the statistician and analyst at Liverpool. And he was pointing out, he was there when Brendan was there, and he was there when Klopp was there. And it's safe to say that, shall we say, he believes there was an enormous change when Klopp came in terms of being able to work as part of a team and be able to take on some kind of direction. One of the things about Brendan, it's a very interesting, a wider ranging discussion, and it's probably for another day, is that football comes in little cycles and things like that. And Brendan is very much one of the possession-based managers. And he talks all the time about death by possession, which means you kill a team eventually by the amount of possession you have. You just wear them there, and it's death by football.
Yeah.
You just complete, and we've seen that work with Celtic. You know, so many last-minute goals, etc. Just this switch. The problem is when you've got teams at home sitting in and then know it, it can be very, very turgid, and this is crucial. It can be unsuccessful, and if you don't change things, it's a problem. Almaty was his worst hour for me because it was very clear to anybody at Almaty that this horseshoe or this passing thing, it just wasn't going. The pitch was rotten. Almaty was winning second balls in it, and you really had to go for it then. You really had to say something like, and managers say, oh, we'll always stick to a process, we'll stick to our principles. No. You're half an hour, 40 minutes away. This is the biggest game of your season. You're 40 minutes away Champions League. You've had almost, you have an hour and a half in Glasgow, it's not worked. You've got an hour here, it's not worked. You have to do something here. And I don't care what it is, if it's going 2 up top, if it's going 4-4-2, if it's going 3-5-2, whatever. You just have to change this. And you have to get the ball quicker. The only chance they ever had in the game was the time they got the ball, a long ball through to Maeda.
Maeda, yeah.
That was the only time. It didn't create a real chance from play.
And it brings me to the point, before we start to talk about Martin, Hugh has mentioned Maeda. Maeda was the tip of the iceberg once again, Ruffy, on the unrest in the background. If you go back to Odson Edouard, Moussa Dembele, Dedrick Boyata, you know, you only have to look at yet again, this time around, it's Maeda promised a move, last minute doesn't materialise, an unhappy player who dropped off completely. And then you have a situation in the background where not only is he slaughtering them, comparing them to Honda Civic, you're actually looking at the team, and I describe it as petulance, because I watch them sometimes trackside and I'm thinking, he's throwing some players under a bus. Dane Murray shouldn't have started against Hearts. And I'm not for 1 minute looking and saying I'm trying to be the keyboard warrior or the Monday morning quarterback and things like that. But he started to put players in there almost as if to prove a point, or not play players to prove a point. Suddenly Bernardo's not been within a whiff of that side. Engels is certainly not somebody that they thought they were signing for 11 million. Austin Trusty is favoured ahead of Dane Murray. Some of his selections were baffling, but I also thought it was petulance.
Well, he's the only one that can answer that, isn't he? You know, and then obviously he's trying to prove a point to some people by his team selection. I personally don't agree with you. I thought that I'm impressed with the boy Donovan. I think he'll be a player in the future.
Well, what do you not agree with?
I don't agree with the bit that he's sort of using it to prove a point. You know, I don't agree with the Trusty one saying that the two centre-halves are similar. In this modern day, most footballers are two-footed. So I think you would have got away with it then. But I think, you know, the young boy, I agree with the young boy, it was too early for him. I don't think he should have put him in there. I don't think he had enough game experience to go into a game of that magnitude. So... But I don't think he used it to prove a point to the directors. I really don't. I think he's just looked at what he had at his available.
There's an interesting point being made here, saying that Rodgers and Neil Lennon and Ronnie Deila have all had problems with the recruitment process as well. I think that's an interesting point, that we can talk at length about Brendan, but it's a problem that most managers have had at Celtic Park.
I don't think you can. Every manager gets that though, Hugh.
I think so. I think, see, like, if you went to Pep Guardiola quite privately and said, what do you think about the recruitment process? He'd be moaning. He said, we should have got him in as someone. Why did we wait not to release Rodgers when he was injured and all that? I think the crucial thing, and I'm not saying, by the way, Celtic's recruitment has been without its woes. It has, and I think the board would agree. I mean, the board agreed that the transfer window in December was poor, and they came out and said in a statement after meeting fans that it was unsatisfactory in the summer. I think the crucial thing about it. The thing that separates this situation from a normal, I didn't get the players I wanted, so I'm off, or, you know, I didn't like it, is the public nature of the no other word for it, of the vitriol.
Yeah, yeah. You don't like to see, and I certainly, I think we mentioned on this show on countless occasions, Ruffy, some of the comments and abuse that was fired at the board. We'd mentioned that there needs to be an element of, there needs to be nobody in a democracy. You know, you're not going to deny them the right to say that they're not happy, but there's a way to go about your business, and some people just cross the line, and you don't want to see people like Peter Lawwell abused, Michael Nicholson abused, and you know, then of course you can have your banners, you can have your say that you are not happy with the way it's gone over a number of years, and you're not happy with the amount of money in the bank or whatever. But there's a way to go about that protest, and it's certainly not the way some people cross the line.
No, I thought it got particularly bad, particularly at the Partick Thistle game. I think Celtic supporters had taken the whole stand. I expected to see a wee bit of protest here and there, but it was the whole stand. The whole stand of 3 pictures. Everybody had a picture of the people that they thought were to blame. And we're all human, we're all individuals, you know. And to stand there and have that thrown at you with a whole section of support is, I don't care who you are, to try and get that out of your head and deal with it must have been a hard one to deal with, because that particular day, but it's been going on and on and on and on, you know. It's, and even at the meetings when they had, the supporters were coming out saying, well, nobody's owning up to anything. Nobody's apologising, nobody's doing, they're just saying, right, go away, we'll sort it out. So from that aspect, the fans had already made their mind up that 3 people were to blame for this.
Greavesy says Brendan was on the verge of being sacked, so he walked before he was pushed to save face. I don't think he's managed to save face, Hugh, to be perfectly honest with you.
I agree that he was, Jack. I think if, as I said earlier in the programme, I think if they had a replacement, he'd have been gone. And
because of the statements, Hugh, or because of the football?
No, I think the football, I think this even preceded the football, the 2 results. I think there was such a disillusion with him after Almaty, after what he was saying. Again, you know, everything was getting turned on. The board were already in the line of fire over things that, too much money, not recruiting and all that. And suddenly they're getting friendly, they're under friendly fire. The manager, one of their colleagues is coming in and saying, well, you're not doing enough, you're not working well enough. Now, you might believe all that, but it's no way to conduct yourself as a manager, in my view, and it's no way to conduct yourself as a human being, in my view. Because just think about it. If you were sitting here, if I was sitting here and then slaughtering the Daily Mail or the Guardian or whoever else I work for, I wouldn't be working for them for very long.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a key point. I mean, I must admit though, Hugh, I don't know, I think we've been critical at times, balanced, but critical and offered opinion on a regular basis on situations where I think the board has deserved criticism. But obviously, by the time I was in the press room at Tynecastle and got the chance to ask him questions, because our chances to get in front of him have been few and far between, it was an opportunity for me to actually say to him, well, wait a minute, the buck stops with you. When are you going to take responsibility? You are the man that's got a squad, you know. You mentioned, lost to Kairat Almaty, lost to Dundee, embarrassed by Motherwell, got out of jail.
Lost a cup final against a team that didn't have a shot on target.
There you are. You know, and again, he got prickly. He was, I mean, you could visibly see him as if to say, you know, I'll take responsibility. But it was an indignant look at me, you know.
I think, see, the thing is, it's always easy in life, and I'm old enough to say this, to say the words that I'll take responsibility in that. But the matter is of actually taking responsibility, to see when things are really tough, to take it on yourself and shield others, to say, and this doesn't apply just in football, it applies in life generally. I don't want to be too pious or sanctimonious, but the job sometimes is to shield others, and sometimes to unfairly take, on your shoulders, because that's your job. Your job is to say, if somebody says to you, what about playing, not playing, Trusty playing, so listen, that was my decision. Nothing to do with the kid, nothing to do with Trusty. You saw how it worked it, but you know, instead of all this Honda Civic, I mean, even Maida's been thrown under the bus. We think the comment about if you don't want to be at Celtic, you know, blah de blah, was that directed at Maida? It was certainly directed at somebody in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Where
He said that ahead of Kyogo going.
I know, and then you say to yourself, well, all these statements, a great thing in life, a great test in life when you're listening to somebody. It's the old Latin thing, cui bono. Who does it benefit? When somebody makes a statement, who benefits from that statement? And a lot. That's why Dermot Desmond locked into this. A lot of statements that Brendan made were self-serving. They were made to protect him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, just before we finish, you know, it's a classic line, the king is dead, long live the king.
Yeah.
Martin's in. What's your thoughts, Ruffy?
Martin's read the interview that he had there said a young manager. He said it twice. I'll be in here till a young manager comes in. Has he been talking the way ahead to the powers that be? That might be the way they're going ahead. There'll be certainly tons of candidates getting thrown out there, but that young that he came away with twice indicates that might be the way they're going ahead.
Yeah, okay, Martin, the main crux of that press conference, less than 24 hours. He'd obviously been on TalkSport, he'd been talking about Hearts and their position, but he got a call and he had 10 minutes to make up his mind. And it needs everyone going in the same direction and winning. That's what his immediate task is. Although, as ever with Martin, he took everybody on a mazy run and then says, he's fantastic at that. And by the way, Weeshug has said, Weeshug's just come out with a fantastic line that made me smile. Basically, Peter, Brendan has never liked you. Tough questions will get us back up.
And Brendan is not alone in that.
Yeah, we should get a raffle ticket, will you?
You really need to start going to the press conferences in disguise.
Yeah.
You need to get the nose and the glasses and the hair and get in there.
To be fair, I know Hugh backed me up on this. I had a great relationship with Brendan. First time around. Second time around, we didn't get near him because we were barred, obviously. So, getting to press conferences to speak to him, few and far between. Martin, my God almighty, I fought with him every week because he did take you on a maze because he didn't want to answer questions. But he was in good mood today. He says, if we don't win on Wednesday, they might be looking for a new manager on Thursday, which was classic Martin. Obviously, Sean Maloney's in there talking again about the joy of going to be working with Martin. And Martin did say something which I think is something which will be interesting because he's in an interim role. I'm going to try and enjoy it this time around because it's so intense when you're in. And his first time around, Ruffy, he stands on the steps and then everybody tells him, by the way, welcome to Celtic, but it'll take you 5 years to catch Dick Advocaat's side.
Took him 20 minutes.
Yes, absolutely, in the 6-2 game. But nevertheless, the pressures were intense.
Yeah, I think we can realise what it is to be the main man in a team like Celtic, Rangers, whoever. The pressures that go with it. I mean, I can't imagine what he has to deal with in a day. Telephone calls, who he's answering to him. It is, as every manager goes into a football club, they say it's 24 hours. And if it's 24 hours with a wee team, I don't know what it's like to be with Celtic.
Yeah, okay, there's obviously a few runners and riders, Cara, for the job itself. So we've got a graphic of the managers that have been quoted in the running when Martin finishes his interim period in charge.
Yeah, we do indeed. We've got Ange Postecoglou at 15-8 at the moment, of course, here before and very successful. Kieran McKenna, who quite a few people have been speaking about in the YouTube chat at the moment. We've got Kieran McKenna will be the next manager. Bookmark this, says Chris Fraser, but a couple of other people saying that he might just be too expensive. Sean Maloney is at 8-1 along with Robbie Keane. Of course, Martin O'Neill at 9-1. And then we've got Knutson from Bodo Glimt there as well, and Nancy, who is in the MLS.
What do you make of that, Hugh?
Interesting. I would add other names to it. I think Marcus Rose, who's out of a job, experienced, has a style of play, knows what it's like to work under a sporting director and managed at the very top level. I think he'd be an interesting one. Craig Bellamy would be an interesting one for me as well.
Yeah, he's a different kettle of fish now as a manager.
And he would certainly play the Celtic way He knows a bit about us up here. He had his problems in the past with his, shall we say, his temperament and that, but seems to have really settled down. I've heard really good things about him. They would be two I'd throw in the mix. The ones against Ange, I don't know if Ange would be keen on coming back. And Kieran McKenna is apparently on stupefying wages at Ipswich.
Well, that rules him out.
And he, again, even if he wasn't, do you want to take a young coach and then throw him right into a Celtic, particularly a Celtic in crisis? Celtic at the time where they could throw Ronnie Dyla into a more managed environment. But this is a tight environment. And I always go back to the thing, you know, like Gordon Strachan, when he came to Celtic, was one of the great Scottish players, had played in one of the great Scottish teams and knew what Scotland was all about. He's also an assured manager. He'd managed down south, got Southampton to an FA Cup final. And when he came to Celtic, he was astonished at the pressures.
Yeah, and he worked on a greatly reduced budget from Martin.
Oh, I say always he took Celtic from Chris Sutton to Chris Killen.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic the way you remember that, Hugh. Chris Killen, where are they now? That's a Sunday Post feature if ever I've seen one.
But should be gone.
Yeah, absolutely. On the road with your groundhopper. Listen, thank you to so many of you for giving us your thoughts on that. And of course, as Cara mentioned there, they're the runners and riders so far, but somebody could come out of left field, but Martin's got an immediate job. How long do you think he's got?
He's got to get somebody, I think.
You think is it a couple of weeks? Is it a...
Who knows? I mean, I don't know
is
how
it to the summer?
It could be.
Yeah. Robbie?
I think it is results. You know, you've got a semi-final coming up, obviously.
But they could limp with him.
Yeah. And he's a kind of, I've always said that you always should have a manager with got a bit of respect coming through the dressing room. I know a lot of the players won't know who he is or remember what he is. The majority will know what he done for the club, so I think that's a head start.
And he'll know how to address the fans, and he'll know how to address the media, and he'll leave, I think now he'll probably leave others. He did certainly in his heyday, but he'll leave others to do the actual precise coaching.
Yeah, and just on that point, just before we finish, on this momentous 24 hours, to be honest with you, in Scottish football, from a manager's point of view, resigning, from a majority owner, from absolutely the most blistering press statement I've seen in a long while. But the manager's gone. There's an interim manager in. Do we now have a slowing down of this unrest and demonstrations? Are the board out of the woods yet?
No.
Or do you think this is going to be a long, sustained period of criticism until they get change?
Yeah, I don't really know how this is going. I've talked about this before. I don't see the kind of fundamental change that some fans want. I don't see the route to that. So I think there'll always be...
You're saying, Peter, he's not going to come out, Brendan Rodgers isn't going to come out. If he does come out, it could make it worse. Depending on what he says.
I think Brendan Rodgers' immediate plan, I don't think, I mean, I know somebody said he's 4-1 at the bookies with the Wolves job, but I don't think he can suddenly jump after a resignation, because you would smell a rat in that whole movement. You would think he'd already preempted, I'll resign because I've gone somewhere. So I don't think he can pull that stroke. Listen, I'm there to be, found out with that comment. But what I would say, Ruffy, is I think he'll wait, pick his moment, and then try and rewrite his own version of events. Now, I'm not saying necessarily they're going to be untrue. He will have things in there that are very accurate, just the same as some of Dermot Desmond's. But the one thing I do say with conviction, and Hugh said there, you don't know how it's going to end with the board, I don't see any change. I think Dermot Desmond sits in, the board rides it out and says, let Martin and them gather a few wins, and then they'll all forget about it.
Yeah, I think I don't see a route for boardroom change. I just don't see the route. I don't see how you do it.
No, neither do I.
But I think one thing is, I think there's within Celtic at the moment, I think there will be a period of very strong reflection, and I think they'll now be much more open to changing the way the club is run, particularly on the football side. And I think part of that was the case of the clear out from people that left with Brendan today. I think now they'll sit down and say, they've got to get some deep thinking done. You know, what is our route to the first team? Why have we got B teams? What is our recruitment? It worked at one time. What is the thing now? What is the manager's role in recruitment? Does he have a veto? You know, set down things. Do we have a transfer committee that they have at Liverpool, where the manager is only one voice, an important voice, but he's only one voice? I think they need a pretty root and I think that'll be the way forward. I think another way forward would be they'll have to improve communication with the fans, and part of that, I think, might be to set up some kind of fan board.
Well, they've spoke about it for a long time. You know, even one person coming on and hearing what the inner sanctum is happening at the club, but it's never ever happened. They need to do something to get the supporters back on board. You can't continue going into games with protests.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's been an interesting one on this programme. Tomorrow, the journalist, Hugh, will be back with me. We'll be talking about other things as well, Hugh. We're looking forward to going to see the Kenny Dalglish movie.
Yeah, and tomorrow's top 10, no, apart from top 10 great sports movies, top 10 great Scots footballers. Where does Kenny stand in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And also,
spoiler.
let's do a top 5 press releases as well, because I think it's going to be a hard push to beat that one we've just witnessed from Dermot Desmond. Give us your thoughts. Continually, we want to read out as many of them as possible over our shows. The journals will be on. We've also got some really good one-to-ones coming up as well in Straight Talk, and of course Cara. With, of course, the European football show. She's practically on everything, Ruffy. She's doing the tactics board as well. I was going to throw her the keys to the car and just say, right, go and enjoy yourself, you know. You've got everything else. Cara Henderson, Kerry Pollock, Alison McConnell, Cheryl Smith. We've got all our team. Kobe Henderson up there in Aberdeen, because we'll be talking about Aberdeen as well. And we'll also be discussing the aftermath on the Thursday of the games. One of them will be the first game in charge for such a long time for Martin O'Neill, albeit in interim charge. We're going to hear from Danny Rule as well on our social media platforms. The Rangers manager's been speaking today ahead of that big game at Easter Road. What a match that's going to be on Wednesday night, Hibs against Rangers. So thank you to all of you for your contribution on TikTok, on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you want to, you can get a fabulous prize going to the Champions League final if you sign up for the season to PLZ Soccer's premium service. From Hugh, from Ruffy, from Cara, and from myself, Peter Martin, thank you for listening and watching.
Get ready for the trip of a lifetime to the Champions League final in Budapest. This is your chance to experience the ultimate footballing event of 2026. Sign up to PLZ Premium for the season and you're in the draw to win the VIP package to the final. Flights, accommodation and tickets all included for you and one friend. Unlock exclusive content and prize giveaways on PLZ Premium. Do not miss out on this incredible opportunity. Secure your spot for the 2026 Champions League final by clicking the link in our bio.